The trading ship. Harmony's dream floated quietly in the darkness of space. It was a small vessel, built for carrying goods between planets, not for fighting or exploring dangerous areas. The ship belonged to the Veltari, a peaceful race of beings who looked like tall humans, but with silver scales covering their skin and large, dark eyes that could see in very dim light. Captain Velnara stood on the bridge, her scaled hands gripping the metal rail as she watched the warning lights flash, red across the control panels. The ship's power core had failed 3 hours ago, and now they were stuck in the outer edge of the Kepler 442 star system with no way to move and limited air to breathe. "How much time do we have?" she asked her chief engineer, Kesevin, who was working frantically at a control station. Kesevin looked up from the sparking electronics. His silver scales were darker than usual, a sign of stress among their people. "Maybe 12 hours before the air runs out completely. The emergency power won't last much longer either." The captain closed her large, dark eyes and took a deep breath. In all her years of trading across the galaxy, she had never faced a situation this bad. The Harmony's dream carried 20 crew members, all of them counting on her to find a solution. "Can we send a message?" she asked. "Yes, but only once. The emergency transmitter has enough power for one strong signal before it dies," Kesevin replied. Captain Velnara thought about their options. They were far from any Veltari space stations or colonies. The nearest help was probably days away, even if someone received their call and came immediately. But they had to try. Send a general distress call on all frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that we need help. Meanwhile, far across the solar system, a human monitoring station orbited around Titan, one of Saturn's moons. The station was small but filled with advanced equipment that could hear radio signals from very far away. Communications officer. Hannah sat at her desk, listening to the quiet static that came from empty space. Hannah was young for her job, only 25 years old, but she had excellent hearing and could recognize different types of signals better than most people. She had been working the night shift for 3 months, and usually nothing interesting happened. Most nights, she just listened to the normal sounds of space and filed reports about solar radiation levels. But tonight was different. At exactly 23:47, her equipment picked up something new. It was a signal, but not from any human ship or station. The pattern was completely different from anything in their databases. Hannah leaned forward and adjusted her headphones, trying to hear it more clearly. The signal was weak, but definitely artificial. Someone was broadcasting a message, and they were asking for help. Even though she couldn't understand the words, the tone and pattern made it clear that this was an emergency call. Hannah's heart began beating faster. This could be the first time humans had received a message from aliens. She quickly recorded the signal and ran it through the computer's analysis programs. The results confirmed her suspicions. This was not from any known human source. She reached for her communication device and contacted Admiral Tejo, the commander of the 7th Human Defense Fleet. Even though it was very late at night, the Admiral answered immediately. "Admiral, this is Communications Officer Hannah at Titan Station. I've detected what appears to be an alien distress signal." There was a moment of silence before Admiral Tejo responded. His voice was calm but serious. "Are you certain it's not from one of our ships?" "Yes, sir. I've checked all our frequencies and ship registrations. This is definitely not human. The signal pattern and technology are completely different from ours." Admiral Tejo was quiet for a few seconds, thinking. "Send me all the data immediately. I'm calling an emergency meeting." Back on the Harmony's dream, Captain Velnara waited nervously after sending their distress call. The ship was getting colder as the heating system struggled with limited power. Some of her crew members were already wearing their emergency suits to stay warm. "Do you think anyone heard us?" asked her navigation officer, a young Veltari named Torwin. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "All we can do now is wait and try to keep the ship running as long as possible." What Captain Velnara didn't know was that her message had traveled through space for several hours before reaching the human listening station. She also didn't know that the humans who received it were very different from the peaceful traders. Like herself, humanity had just finished fighting in a terrible war that lasted over 100 years. During that time, they had built the most powerful military force in their part of the galaxy. Their ships were huge, fast, and carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But the war had taught humans something important. Fighting should only be used to protect people, never to hurt innocent beings. Admiral Taiho was a veteran of that long war. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. But despite his tough appearance, he cared deeply about helping others. When he received Hana's report about the alien distress signal, he made a decision that would change everything. Instead of sending one small rescue ship, which would have been the normal response, Admiral Taiho decided to send his entire fleet. The 7th Human Defense Fleet consisted of 200 ships, including massive battleships, fast cruisers, and support vessels carrying medical supplies and repair equipment. His staff officers were surprised by this decision. "Sir, shouldn't we send just one ship to investigate first?" asked his second-in-command. Admiral Taiho looked at the star charts showing where the signal had come from. "When someone calls for help, we respond with everything we have. That's what makes us human." Within 2 hours, the entire 7th Fleet was preparing to leave. The flagship Indomitable Spirit led the formation, followed by dozens of other vessels. The sight was impressive and terrifying at the same time. 200 of the most advanced warships ever built, all heading toward one small alien trading vessel. As the human fleet prepared to jump into hyperspace, Captain Velnara was still, trying to keep her crew alive. The air was getting thin, and some of the younger crew members were starting to feel dizzy. She had no way of knowing that help was coming, or that the help would arrive in a form that no one in the galaxy could have expected. The last thing Admiral Taiho did before giving the order to jump was to record a message for the alien ship, even though he knew they probably couldn't understand it yet. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Taiho of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. Help is coming. Hold on." Then the entire human armada disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward their first meeting with alien life. The 7th Human Defense Fleet moved through hyperspace like a giant metal storm. 200 ships traveled together in perfect formation, their powerful engines creating ripples in space-time that could be detected from light years away. At the center of this massive force, Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable Spirit. The ship was enormous, almost 2 kilometers long and armed with enough weapons to level a small moon. But despite its fearsome appearance, the Indomitable Spirit was currently carrying medical supplies, food, water, and repair equipment instead of extra ammunition. Admiral Taiho had learned long ago that helping people was often more important than being ready to fight them. Captain Jiwon of the heavy cruiser Iron Dawn contacted the Admiral through the fleet communication system. Her ship was one of the fastest in the fleet, designed for quick strikes and rapid response missions. She had been serving under Admiral Taiho for 8 years and trusted his judgment, but this situation seemed unusual even for him. "Admiral, with respect, Don't you think we might be overreacting? Captain Jiwan asked. We're bringing enough firepower to conquer a small star system just to help one damaged ship. Admiral Taiho looked out at the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main view screen. Captain, let me tell you something I learned during the war. When people are dying and they call for help, they don't care if you send one ship or 1,000 ships. They just want to know that someone is coming. But there's something else to consider. What's that, sir? This might be our first contact with an alien species. If we show up with just one small rescue ship, what message does that send? That humans don't have the ability to help? That we don't take their emergency seriously? But if we arrive with our full fleet, they'll know that when humans make a promise to help, we keep it with everything we have. Captain Jiwan thought about this for a moment. And if they think we're attacking them, then we'll have to convince them otherwise. But I'd rather explain why we brought too much help than explain why we didn't bring enough. Throughout the fleet, other ship captains were having similar conversations with their crews. Many of the humans had never seen an alien before, and they didn't know what to expect. Some were excited about making first contact with a new species. Others were worried about starting an interstellar war by accident. On the supply ship, Generous, Captain Jihoon was checking his cargo manifests. His vessel wasn't built for fighting, but it carried enough food, water, medical supplies, and basic equipment to support a small colony for months. When Admiral Taiho had ordered the fleet to prepare for a rescue mission, Captain Jihoon had immediately loaded everything he thought the aliens might need. Sir, we have enough supplies to help about 500 people for 3 months, reported his cargo officer. Do we know how many aliens we're rescuing? No idea, Captain Jihoon replied. But Admiral Taiho always says it's better to have too much than too little. If they don't need everything we brought, we can always take it back home. Meanwhile, on the Harmony's Dream, the situation was getting worse. The Veltari crew had been without main power for 6 hours now, and the emergency systems were starting to fail. The air was getting thinner, and the temperature inside the ship had dropped to just above freezing. Captain Velnara gathered her crew in the main cargo hold, which was the warmest place left on the ship. 20 scared faces looked at her, waiting for orders or reassurance. She wished she had better news to give them. The emergency power will last maybe 4 more hours, she said honestly. After that, we'll have to rely on personal oxygen tanks, and those only have 2 hours of air each. Chief Engineer Kesevan spoke up from the back of the group. Captain, I've been thinking about our distress signal. What if whoever received it doesn't understand our technology? What if they can't find us? It was a good question, and one that Captain Velnara had been trying not to think about. The Veltari had been exploring space for over 300 years, but they had never encountered another intelligent species. Their technology was designed to work with other Veltari equipment. An alien species might not be able to understand their signal at all. We have to have faith, she said finally. Someone out there heard us. I can feel it. What she couldn't feel was the massive disturbance in hyperspace that was rapidly approaching their location. The human fleet was now only 2 hours away from dropping back into normal space, and their arrival would create energy signatures that could be detected halfway across the star system. Back on the Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Taiho was meeting with his senior officers to plan their approach. The conference room was filled with experienced military personnel, but none of them had ever dealt with a situation like this before. What do we know about the aliens? Asked Commander Do Yun, the fleet's chief science officer. Very little, replied Communications Officer Minji. Their signal used radio frequencies similar to ours, but the modulation patterns are completely different. I've been trying to decode their language, but so far I can only tell that it was definitely a distress call. What about their technology level? Asked Captain Young-ho, who commanded one of the fleet's reconnaissance ships. Commander Do-hyun pulled up some data on the main screen. Based on the signal strength and transmission method, I'd estimate they're roughly equivalent to our technology, from about 50 years ago. Advanced enough for interstellar travel, but probably not as sophisticated as our current systems. Admiral Taiho nodded thoughtfully. That means they might be intimidated by our ships. We need to approach carefully and make it clear that we're here to help, not to threaten them. How do we do that without a common language? Asked Captain Ji-won. Universal gestures, replied linguist Neon, who had joined the meeting. Mathematics, simple pictures, peaceful actions. If we approach slowly and start helping them immediately, our intentions should become clear quickly. The Admiral looked around the room at his officers. These were good people, experienced and careful, who had learned the importance of thinking before acting. Remember, everyone, we're not just representing ourselves here. We're representing all of humanity. This first contact will determine how this species thinks about humans for generations to come. As the fleet prepared to drop out of hyperspace, Admiral Taiho sent one final message to all ship captains. When we arrive, weapon systems remain powered down unless I give specific orders. Medical and engineering teams prepare for immediate deployment. We're here to save lives, not to start a war. The human Armada was about to make the most important entrance in galactic history, and none of them realized that their overwhelming response to a simple distress call was about to change everything. Space around the Harmony's Dream suddenly filled with bright flashes of light as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. One moment, the small Veltari trading ship was alone in the darkness, and the next moment it was surrounded by 200 massive warships that appeared in perfect formation. Captain Velnera was checking the emergency life support systems when her navigation officer, Torwin, called out in panic. "Captain, ships, everywhere!" She rushed to the bridge and looked out through the main view screen. What she saw made her silver scales turn pale with fear. Enormous vessels surrounded her tiny ship, each one bigger than the largest space station she had ever seen. The ships were dark gray and covered with what looked like weapons systems. They moved with military precision, taking positions that completely trapped the Harmony's Dream. "Are they pointing weapons at us?" she asked, her voice shaking. Torwin checked his instruments with trembling hands. I can't tell. Their technology is so advanced that our sensors can barely detect anything. But Captain, look at the size of those ships. Each one could destroy our entire home planet. On the human flagship Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Taiho was also looking at the alien vessel. Compared to his massive fleet, the Harmony's Dream looked like a toy. It was maybe 100 meters long, small enough to fit inside one of his ship's cargo bays. "Communications. Can you reach them?" he asked. Communications Officer Minji worked quickly at her station. "I'm trying, sir. I'm broadcasting on the same frequency they use for their distress call, but I'm not getting any response." What Minji didn't know was that the aliens were receiving her signals, but they were too terrified to answer. On the Veltari ship, the communication system was beeping with incoming messages, but Captain Velnera was afraid that responding might make the giant ship's attack. Chief Science Officer Do-yun was studying readings from the alien vessel. "Sir, their ship is in very bad condition. I'm detecting massive power failures and life support problems. If we don't help them soon, they're going to die." Admiral Taiho made a decision. Open a channel on all frequencies. Let's try to talk to them. Minji activated the communication system, and Admiral Taiho's voice was broadcast toward the small alien ship. He spoke slowly and clearly, hoping that his tone would sound peaceful, even if they couldn't understand his words. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Taiho of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal and we are here to help you. Please respond if you can hear this message. On the Harmony's Dream, the alien crew gathered around their communication station as the human voice came through their speakers. The words were completely unfamiliar, but the tone seemed calm and controlled. However, Captain Velnara was still focused on the massive fleet surrounding her ship. "They're probably demanding our surrender," she said to her crew. "No one brings this many warships unless they plan to attack." Chief Engineer Kesavin disagreed. "Captain, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Why would they bother talking to us first?" It was a good point. But Captain, Velnara had been trained in military history. In her experience, when someone showed up with overwhelming force, they usually wanted something. The problem was figuring out what these aliens wanted and whether her crew would survive long enough to give it to them. She activated her own communication system and began broadcasting what she hoped sounded like a surrender message. In the Veltari language, she said, "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Velnara of the merchant ship Harmony's Dream. We surrender to your superior force. We are not military personnel. We are peaceful traders. Please don't hurt my crew." When her message reached the human ships, linguist Neon immediately began working to analyze it. She had sophisticated computer programs that could identify patterns in unknown languages. But this was still going to take time. "I need at least an hour to start understanding their language," she told Admiral Taiho. "But I can tell from the tone and pattern that they sound scared." "Scared of us?" asked Admiral Taiho, very scared. "This sounds like they're trying to surrender or plead for mercy." Admiral Taiho felt frustrated. Here he was, trying to help these aliens, and they thought he was threatening them. He understood their fear, though. If he had been in a small ship and suddenly found himself surrounded by 200 alien warships, he would probably be scared too. "What can we do to show them we're friendly?" he asked his staff. Commander Do-hyun had an idea. "Sir, their ship is clearly in distress. What if we just start helping them without waiting for permission? Actions speak louder than words." "Explain." "We could send engineering teams over to their ship to start repairs. If we're obviously trying to fix their problems instead of making them worse, they'll understand our intentions." Admiral Taiho liked this idea, but he worried about one problem. What if they think we're boarding their ship to take it over? Captain Young-ho, who commanded the reconnaissance ship Swift Arrow, spoke up. "Sir, what if we send the repair teams over in our smallest, most obviously non-military ships? And what if the teams go over carrying tools and supplies instead of weapons?" This made sense to everyone in the meeting. Admiral Taiho gave the order for engineering teams to prepare for immediate deployment to the alien vessel. The teams would use small transport ships that were obviously designed for carrying cargo, not for fighting. But as the human ships began moving to deploy their repair teams, the situation on the Harmony's Dream became even more tense. Captain Velnara watched as several of the huge alien vessels began launching smaller craft toward her ship. "They're sending boarding parties," she announced to her crew. "Everyone prepare for capture. Remember, we are peaceful traders. Don't give them any reason to hurt us." The Veltari crew was now completely convinced that they were about to be taken prisoner by a hostile alien military force. They gathered in the main cargo bay, sitting with their hands visible and trying to look as non-threatening as possible. What they didn't realize was that the approaching human transport ships were filled with engineers carrying tools, medical, supplies, food, water, and everything needed to repair their ship. The humans were about to begin the most generous rescue operation in galactic history, while the aliens prepared for the worst experience of their lives. Chief Engineer Dong Yun, who was leading the human repair team, checked his equipment one final time. Remember, everyone, we're dealing with a completely unknown alien technology. Be careful, be respectful, and focus on keeping them alive. This is the most important repair job any of us will ever do. As the human transport ships approached the Harmony's dream, both species were about to learn that first contact was much more complicated than anyone had expected. Lieutenant Commander Young-ho stepped carefully through the airlock connecting his transport ship to the alien vessel. As the fleet's lead xenobiologist, he had studied hundreds of different life forms, but he had never met an intelligent alien species before. Behind him, linguist Naeon carried a portable translation computer and several communication devices. The inside of the Harmony's dream was cold and dark. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and Young-ho could hear the ship's systems struggling to keep working. The air was thin but breathable for humans, though it smelled different from what he was used to. "Hello?" he called out softly. "We're here to help you." From around a corner, Captain Velnara appeared with her hands raised high above her head. Her silver scales reflected the dim emergency lights, and her large dark eyes showed fear and confusion. Behind her, the rest of her crew stood in a group, all of them holding their hands up in what they hoped was a universal sign of surrender. Young-ho immediately realized the problem. He also raised his hands, but not in surrender. Instead, he held them out with his palms open to show that he wasn't carrying any weapons. He spoke slowly and calmly. "We're not here to hurt you. We got your message asking for help. We want to fix your ship." Naeon quickly activated her translation computer and began recording everything the alien said. She needed to build a database of their language as quickly as possible so the two species could communicate properly. Captain Velnara looked at the strange aliens in front of her. They appeared similar to her own people in basic shape, but their skin was soft and pink instead of covered in protective scales. They wore what looked like uniforms, but the uniforms didn't seem to be armor or combat gear. Most importantly, she didn't see any obvious weapons. Are you here to capture us?" she asked in her own language. Naeon's computer beeped as it tried to analyze the alien words. It would take time to understand their language completely, but the computer could already identify emotional patterns. "She sounds confused and scared, but not angry," Naeon whispered to Young-ho. Young-ho decided to try a more direct approach. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Human, friend." Then he pointed to the Veltari captain and said, "Friend, Captain." Velnara understood the gesture, even if she didn't understand the words. These aliens seemed to be trying to communicate peacefully. But she was still confused about why they had brought such a massive military force just to help one small trading ship. Behind Young-ho and Naeon, more humans began entering the ship. Chief Engineer Dong Yun led a team of technicians carrying toolkits and portable power generators. They moved carefully and respectfully, waiting for permission before touching anything. When Captain Velnara saw the tools and equipment, she began to understand what was happening. These weren't soldiers coming to capture her crew. These were repair technicians coming to fix her ship. "Kesavin," she called to her chief engineer, "I think they really are here to help us." Kesavin approached the human engineers carefully. He pointed to the ship's main power conduit, which was sparking and obviously broken. Then he made gestures showing that the power was off and the ship was dying. Dong-yun immediately understood. He opened his toolkit and pulled out a portable scanner, then pointed to the broken equipment and raised his eyebrows in a questioning gesture. When Kesavan nodded, Dong-yun began examining the alien power systems. "This is incredible," he said to his team. "Their technology is different from ours, but the basic principles are the same. I think we can fix this." While the engineers worked on the power systems, Neon continued trying to establish communication with Captain Velnara. She had brought pictures and simple mathematical symbols that she hoped would help bridge the language gap. But the biggest breakthrough came when Medical Officer So-young arrived with her team. She had brought food, water, and warm blankets for the alien crew. When she offered a bottle of clean water to one of the younger Veltari crew members, the alien accepted it gratefully and immediately began sharing it with the others. Captain Velnara watched this interaction with growing amazement. These humans had brought an entire fleet to help her small crew, and now they were sharing their own supplies with strangers. In her experience, most species only helped others when they expected something in return. Through gestures and simple drawings, Neon managed to ask basic questions about the alien ship and crew. She learned that there were 20 Veltari on board, that their ship was called Harmony's Dream, and that they had been traveling between trading posts when their power failed. The more the two species interacted, the more confused both sides became about each other's motivations. The humans couldn't understand why the aliens seemed so surprised by their willingness to help. The Veltari couldn't understand why anyone would bring such overwhelming military force just to assist strangers. This confusion led to an unexpected problem. As word of the human rescue spread through Veltari communication networks, other alien species in the area began paying attention. The Veltari had many trading partners and business relationships throughout this part of the galaxy, and news of a powerful new military force was spreading quickly. Unfortunately, not all of the species who heard about the humans were as peaceful as the Veltari. 3 hours after the rescue operation began, a patrol of Krex raiders detected the energy signatures from the human fleet and decided to investigate. The Krex were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive pirates who attacked merchant ships and took whatever they wanted. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, and they had never encountered a force they couldn't either defeat or escape from. Commander Grixtal led the 3-ship Krex patrol toward the location where they had detected the unusual energy signatures. When they arrived and saw the massive human fleet, Grixtal assumed he had discovered a new military alliance between the Veltari and an unknown species. "Look at all those ships," he said to his crew. "The Veltari must have hired mercenaries to protect their trade routes. This could be a problem for our operations in this sector." Grixtal decided to test the strength of this new alliance. He ordered his ships to approach the human fleet and demand that they leave Krex territory immediately. In his experience, most species would either fight or run when challenged by Krex raiders. What he didn't know was that he was about to challenge the most powerful military force in known space, commanded by officers who had spent over a century learning how to end fights quickly and decisively. On the indomitable Spirit, Admiral Tejo watched the approaching Krex ships with concern. His fleet was in the middle of a delicate first contact situation, and the last thing he needed was interference from hostile aliens. "Sir, the approaching ships are broadcasting what appears to be a challenge or threat," reported Communications Officer Minji. "They're ordering us to leave this area." Admiral Taiho looked at the tactical display. 3 small but heavily armed ships approaching his fleet of 200 vessels. The situation would have been almost funny if it weren't so. "Dangerous, Captain Jiwon," he said over the fleet communication system. "Are you ready to demonstrate why picking a fight with humans is a bad idea?" "Yes, sir," came the immediate reply from the Iron Dawn. "My crew is standing by." The galaxy was about to witness its first example of what happened when someone threatened a human rescue operation. Commander Grixtal led his 3 Krex raider ships toward the human fleet with complete confidence. In his 20 years of piracy, he had never encountered a force that could stand against Krex military technology. His ships were fast, well-armed, and crewed by experienced fighters who had won dozens of space battles. The Krex were a warrior species that believed strength was the only thing that mattered in the galaxy. They had built their reputation by attacking anyone who seemed weak, and taking whatever they wanted. Grixtal looked at the human ships and saw an opportunity to demonstrate Krex superiority to this new species. "Open a communication channel," he ordered his communications officer. "Let's see what these aliens are made of." His message was broadcast on all frequencies toward the human fleet. "Unknown vessels, you are in Krex territory. You will leave immediately or be destroyed. You have 1 minute to comply." On the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Taiho listened to the alien threat with calm patience. He had dealt with bullies before, both during the Long War and in the years of peace that followed. The message was automatically translated by the ship's computer, which had been analyzing Krex language patterns from intercepted communications. "Sir, should we respond?" asked Communications Officer Minji. "Yes, but let's give them a chance to reconsider," Admiral Taiho replied. He activated the communication system and spoke directly to the Krex commander. "Krex vessels, this is Admiral Taiho of the Human Defense Fleet. We are conducting a humanitarian rescue operation. We have no interest in your territory or your conflicts. Please maintain your distance and allow us to complete our mission." Grixtal laughed when he heard the human response. "Humanitarian rescue? They think we're idiots. Look at the size of their fleet. This is obviously a military invasion disguised as a rescue mission." He turned to his tactical officer. "Target their largest ship. Let's show them what happens when someone lies to the Krex." Meanwhile, on the damaged Veltari ship, Captain Velnara was watching the situation develop with growing horror. She recognized the Krex ships immediately, and she knew what kind of reputation they had throughout the galaxy. "The Krex are some of the most dangerous pirates in this sector," she explained to Young Ho through gestures and the few words that Neon had managed to translate. "They attack anyone they think is weak. They must think your ships are here to invade their territory." Young Ho immediately contacted Admiral Taiho to report what he had learned about the approaching ships. "Sir, according to the aliens we're rescuing, those ships belong to a species called the Krex. They're apparently known as aggressive pirates." "Thank you for the information, Lieutenant Commander," Admiral Taiho replied. "Continue with the rescue operation. We'll handle this situation." But Grixtal wasn't interested in diplomacy. He had decided that the humans were either invaders or potential rivals, and either way, they needed to be taught a lesson about Krex superiority. "All ships, open fire on the human flagship," he ordered. The 3 Krex raiders unleashed their full weapons power against the Indomitable Spirit. Bright energy beams and explosive missiles streaked across space toward the massive human vessel. It was an impressive display of firepower that would have been enough to seriously damage most ships in the galaxy. The attack lasted for 10 seconds and accomplished absolutely nothing. The human flagship's defensive systems absorbed the Krex weapons fire without even dimming the lights on the bridge. Advanced shield technology that had been developed during humanity's long war simply turned the alien attack into harmless light and heat that dissipated into space. "Sir, the Krex vessels have opened fire on us," reported Tactical Officer Seojun from his position on the Iron Dawn. "No damage to any of our ships." Admiral Taiho sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be reasonable, but apparently they were determined to learn things the hard way. "Very well. Captain Ji-won, you may respond. But remember, we want to disable them, not destroy them. Someone needs to survive to spread the word about what happens when you attack a human rescue operation." Captain Ji-won smiled as she gave orders to her crew. The Iron Dawn was a heavy cruiser designed for exactly this type of situation. It could engage multiple enemy vessels simultaneously while barely using a fraction of its total combat capability. Tactical. Target all 3 Krex ships. Use non-lethal weapons only. I want their engines disabled and their weapons offline, but I want their life support systems intact. Understood, Captain. Firing now. What happened next became known throughout the galaxy as the shortest space battle in recorded history. The Iron Dawn fired precisely targeted bursts of energy that instantly disabled all 3 Krex ships without causing any casualties. The alien vessels were left floating helplessly in space, completely unable to move or fight. The entire engagement lasted 28 seconds. Grixtal stared at his control panels in shock. Every system on his ship had been shut down except for life support and basic communications. His engines were dead, his weapons were offline, and his navigation computer was completely fried. How is that possible?" he whispered. His communications officer was trying to understand what had happened. "Sir, they didn't try to destroy us. They could have vaporized all 3 ships with that first shot, but instead they just turned us off." "What kind of species has that level of technological superiority and chooses not to kill their enemies?" asked his tactical officer. It was a very good question, and one that was being asked on every Krex ship. These aliens had demonstrated the ability to completely defeat them without effort, but they had chosen to show mercy instead of violence. On the Veltari ship, Captain Vel Nara and her crew had watched the entire battle through their view screen. They saw the Krex attack, they saw the human response, and they saw 3 of the most feared pirate ships in the galaxy reduced to helpless debris in less than half a minute. "Those humans just defeated the Krex raiders like they were children throwing rocks," Chief Engineer Kesevan said in amazement. "And they didn't destroy them," Captain Vel Nara observed. "They could have, but they chose not to kill anyone." This was a completely new concept for most species in their part of the galaxy. Military superiority usually meant crushing your enemies completely, but these humans had shown overwhelming force and then chosen restraint. Admiral Taiho opened a communication channel to the disabled Krex ships. "Krex vessels, your ships have been disabled but not destroyed. You are free to repair your systems and leave this area. However, if you attack us again, we will respond with less restraint." Then he opened another channel to his entire fleet. "All ships return to rescue operations. And remember, we now have an audience. Everything we do here will be reported across the galaxy. Let's make sure the reports are good ones." Grixtal listened to the human admiral's message with a mixture of fear and confusion. These aliens had just demonstrated that they could destroy his entire raiding fleet without breaking a sweat, but they were giving him a chance to leave with his life. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his communications officer. Grixtal thought for a long moment. He had 2 choices. He could try to repair his ship and escape, or he could stay and try to understand these strange new aliens who seemed to fight only when attacked and who chose mercy over revenge. For the first time in his career as a pirate, Grixtal chose to stay and watch instead of running away. He had a feeling that he was witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. With the Krex threat neutralized, the human fleet returned its full attention to rescuing the Veltari crew. Chief Engineer Dong Yun had already made significant progress repairing the Harmony's dream, but what started as a simple fix, quickly, became something much more impressive. "Admiral," Dong Yun reported over the communication system, "the alien ship's power core is completely burned out. We can replace it with one of our backup generators, but I think we can do better than that." "Explain." Admiral Tejo replied, "Well, sir, their technology is about 50 years behind ours, but it's very well designed. If we upgrade their power systems with our current technology, we could make their ship faster, more efficient, and much safer than it was originally." Admiral Tejo considered this proposal. They were supposed to be conducting a simple rescue, but Dongyun was suggesting they completely modernize the alien vessel. "How long would that take?" "About 18 hours with a full engineering team. But, sir, think about the impression it would make. We wouldn't just be saving them, we'd be giving them technology that would improve their lives for years to come." The Admiral made his decision quickly. "Do it. And Dongyun, don't just upgrade their power systems. Upgrade everything you can: life support, navigation, communications, engines. I want this ship to be better than new when we're finished." Word of the Admiral's decision spread throughout the fleet, and soon dozens of ships were contributing to the rescue effort. Engineering teams, medical personnel, and supply officers all worked together to transform the small Veltari trading vessel. Medical Officer So-young set up a temporary medical station in the Harmony's Dreams cargo bay. She had never treated alien patients before, but she quickly discovered that Veltari biology was similar enough to human biology that most of her equipment worked perfectly. "Your crew is suffering from mild oxygen deprivation and exposure to cold," she explained to Captain Velnara through Naon's improving translation system. "Nothing serious, but you'll feel much better after some rest and proper nutrition." "Captain." Velnara was amazed by the human medical technology. So-young's portable scanners could diagnose health problems instantly, and her medicine seemed to work even better on Veltari than on humans. Within an hour, crew members who had been weak and dizzy were feeling completely healthy, but the medical care was just the beginning. Captain Jai-hoon's supply ship Generous Hand docked with the alien vessel and began transferring an incredible amount of supplies. Food, water, spare parts, emergency equipment, and even entertainment systems were loaded onto the Harmony's Dream. "This is too much," Captain Velnara protested to Young-ho. "We cannot accept all of this. We have nothing to give you in return." Young-ho smiled and tried to explain through gestures and the few words they now had in common. Gift. No payment needed. Friends help friends. The concept was difficult for Captain Velnara to understand. In her experience, no one gave away valuable supplies without expecting something in return. But these humans seemed genuinely happy to help strangers for no reason other than the fact that help was needed. Meanwhile, Dongyun's engineering teams were performing miracles with the ship's technical systems. They had replaced the old power core with a compact human fusion generator that would provide clean energy for decades. The navigation computer had been upgraded with human star charts and advanced calculation systems. The communication array now included human translation software that would allow the Veltari to talk with dozens of other species. "Look at this," Kesavan said to his captain as he examined the new engine systems. They've increased our maximum speed by 300%, and the fuel efficiency is so good that we could travel for months without stopping for supplies. But the most impressive upgrade was to the ship's defensive systems. The humans had installed shield generators and sensor arrays that would protect the Harmony's Dream from most threats in the galaxy. They had also included detailed instructions on how to maintain and repair all the new equipment. As the work continued, more and more alien ships began arriving in the area. News of the human fleet had spread through the local communication networks, and various species came to observe these strange new aliens who had defeated the Krex raiders without destroying them. Some of the arriving ships belonged to species that had been attacked by the Krex in the past. When they saw the disabled pirate vessels floating helplessly near the human fleet, they wanted to know how the humans had achieved such a complete victory. Captain Vel Nara found herself serving as an unofficial ambassador, explaining to other aliens what she had learned about human behavior. "They are warriors," she told a delegation of Thorian merchants, "but they only fight to protect others. They could have destroyed the Krex ships easily, but instead, they chose to disable them." The Thorians were skeptical. "No species becomes that powerful without using violence to get what they want," their captain argued. "Then explain this," Captain Velnara replied, gesturing toward her ship. "They are giving us technology worth more than my vessel was originally worth, and they ask for nothing in return. They brought 200 warships to rescue 20 traders. Does that sound like a species that uses violence to get what it wants?" Word of the human rescue operation spread even further when Grixtal, the Krex commander, finally repaired his communication system and sent a report to his superiors. The message was intercepted by intelligence networks across the galaxy. "The humans are unlike any species we have encountered," he reported. "They have military technology far superior to our own, but they seem to prefer helping others over conquering them. My recommendation is that we avoid conflict with this species until we understand them better." For a Krex commander to recommend avoiding conflict was almost unheard of. The report caused panic in some parts of the galaxy and celebration. In others, back on the Harmony's Dream, the rescue operation was nearly complete. The ship's systems were all functioning better than they ever had before. The crew was healthy and well supplied, and Captain Velnara had enough spare parts and equipment to last for years. Admiral Taiho came aboard the alien vessel personally to oversee the final preparations. He wanted to meet the aliens his fleet had helped and to make sure they understood that they now had friends among the humans. "Your ship is ready for departure," he told Captain Velnara through Neon's translation. "Systeme. But before you leave, I want to give you something special." He handed her a small communication device. "This will let you contact us directly if you ever need help again, and it contains the location of our colonies and space stations in case you want to visit us sometime." Captain Velnara accepted the device with trembling hands. "Admiral Tejo, why have you done all this for strangers?" The Admiral thought for a moment before answering. "Because when someone calls for help, we answer. That's what makes us human." As the Harmony's Dream prepared to depart, its crew realized that they were leaving as ambassadors for an entire species. They carried with them the story of the humans who had responded to a simple distress call with everything they had, who had defeated enemies without destroying them, and who had given freely without asking for anything in return. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity really stood for. As the final repairs were completed on the Harmony's Dream, Captain Velnara requested a formal meeting with Admiral Tejo. She had spent the last 20 hours watching humans work to save her ship and crew, and she needed to understand why they had done it. The meeting took place in the conference room aboard the Indomitable Spirit. Captain Velnara had never been inside a human warship before, and she was surprised by what she found. Despite the vessel's enormous size and obvious military purpose, the interior was clean, bright, and welcoming. The walls displayed artwork from human colonies, and the furniture was designed for comfort rather than intimidation. Admiral Taiho greeted her personally, along with several of his senior officers. Translator In Huan had spent the last day perfecting the language translation system, and now the two species could communicate almost perfectly. Captain Velnara, welcome aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Admiral Taiho said warmly. I hope you're satisfied with the repairs to your ship. Admiral, your people have done far more than repair our ship. You've transformed it into something better than we could have ever imagined, she replied. But I need to understand something. Why did you bring such a massive fleet just to help one small trading vessel? Admiral Taiho gestured for her to sit at the conference table. That's a complicated question with a simple answer. Let me tell you about humanity's history, and maybe you'll understand. Over the next hour, Admiral Taiho explained how humans had evolved on a single planet and had spent thousands of years fighting among themselves. He told her about wars that had devastated entire continents and conflicts that had nearly destroyed human civilization. But we learned something important from all that fighting, he said. We learned that violence doesn't solve problems, it just creates bigger problems. About 150 years ago, we had a war that lasted for over a century. By the time it ended, we had developed weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Captain Velnara listened with growing amazement. You had weapons that could destroy star systems, and you gave them up? Not gave them up, Admiral Taiho corrected. We learned how to use them responsibly. We decided that our military would exist only to protect people, never to conquer them. When someone asks for help, we respond with everything we have because we want to make sure we can actually help them. Commander Do-hyun added, Our philosophy is simple. If you have the power to help someone, you have the responsibility to do it. We brought 200 ships to rescue your crew because 20 lives are worth the effort of 200,000 humans. This concept was revolutionary to Captain Velnara. In her experience, military forces existed to take things from others, not to give things away. The idea that a species could become more powerful by helping others instead of conquering them was completely new. But surely you must want something in return, she said. Resources, territory, trade agreements? We want friendship, Admiral Taiho replied simply. We want to live in a galaxy where species help each other, instead of fighting each other. If we can demonstrate that cooperation is more valuable than conquest, maybe other species will follow our example. Captain Velnara was quiet for a long time, thinking about what she had learned. Finally, she asked, What happens now? Do you expect my people to become your allies? Do you want us to help you fight your enemies? We don't have enemies, Admiral, Taiho said. We have species that don't understand us yet, and species that are afraid of us, but we don't consider anyone to be our enemy unless they force us to defend ourselves. Like the Krex Raiders? Even them. We disabled their ships because they attacked us, but we didn't destroy them because they were acting out of ignorance, not evil. Maybe someday they'll understand that there are better ways to get what they need than taking it from others. This conversation was being recorded and transmitted back to the Veltari homeworlds, where government leaders and philosophers were struggling to understand this new species. The idea that a military force could be used primarily for humanitarian purposes was challenging everything they thought they knew about interstellar relations. Captain Velnara realized that she had become much more than the captain of a damaged trading ship. She was now the first official contact between humanity and the rest of the galaxy, and the story she told would influence how other species viewed humans for generations to come. "Admiral, my people will want to know more about humanity. Would you be willing to send ambassadors to our home worlds?" "We would be honored," Admiral Tejo replied. "But I think you would make an excellent ambassador yourself. You've seen how we operate, and you understand our motivations better than anyone. Over." The next several hours, the foundation for formal diplomatic relations between humans and Veltari was established. But more importantly, Captain Velnara began broadcasting reports about her experience to communication networks throughout the galaxy. Her messages were intercepted and retransmitted by dozens of species, spreading the news about the humans who had defeated the feared Krex raiders without killing anyone, who had upgraded a damaged alien ship instead of just repairing it, and who had asked for nothing in return except friendship. The reactions across the galaxy were mixed but intense. Some species were excited about the possibility of meeting these generous and powerful humans. Others were terrified that such a militarily advanced species might eventually decide to expand their territory. A few species began making plans to contact humanity directly, but the most significant reaction came from the Galactic Trade Council, an organization that regulated commerce between dozens of species. They sent an emergency message to human space, requesting a formal meeting to discuss establishing trade relations and mutual defense agreements. "Admiral," Communications Officer Minji reported, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 17 different species. They all want to meet with human representatives." Admiral Tejo smiled. "I think we're going to need a bigger diplomatic corps." Meanwhile, Commander Grixtal had been quietly listening to all the communication traffic about the humans. His own ship was still disabled, but his crew had been monitoring everything that was being said about this new species. "Commander," his communications officer said, "I've been analyzing the human radio transmissions. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but they're not using it to spy on anyone or gather military intelligence. They're mostly just sharing information about science, art, and philosophy." Grixtal found this almost impossible to believe. A species with that much military power, and they use their communication systems to share poetry? "That's not all, sir. I've intercepted reports from their colonies. They have hundreds of worlds, massive industrial capacity, and a military force that could probably conquer half the galaxy. But instead of expanding their territory, they're spending most of their resources on education, medical research, and environmental protection." For a career pirate like Grixtal, this information was deeply troubling. His entire world view was based on the idea that power was meant to be used to take things from others. But here was a species that had more power than anyone else in the galaxy, and they were using it to give things away. As the human fleet prepared to escort the Harmony's Dream back to Veltari space, Captain Velnara realized that she was returning home with more than just a repaired ship. She was bringing news that would change how her people understood the galaxy and their place in it. The age of human expansion through conquest was over before it had even begun. The age of human influence through compassion was just getting started. 6 months after the rescue of the Harmony's Dream, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Captain Velnara had become the first alien ambassador to human space, establishing the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative with her office on Luna Station, humanity's diplomatic center near Earth. The small communication device that Admiral Taiho had given her had grown into a galaxy-spanning network connecting dozens of species. What had started as a simple rescue mission had become the foundation for the largest peaceful alliance in galactic history. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the indomitable spirit, but his fleet looked very different now. Alongside human, vessels flew ships from 17 different species, all painted with the same blue and white colors that had become the symbol of the interspecies rescue fleet. The sight still amazed him every time he saw it. "Admiral, we're receiving another distress signal," Communications Officer Hana reported from her station. She had been promoted to the flagship after her role in detecting the first alien signal. "This one is coming from the Andorian sector." "What's the situation?" "A colony ship with about 3,000 people has lost power near a dangerous asteroid field. They're requesting immediate assistance." Admiral Taiho looked at his tactical display, which now showed the positions of over 400 ships from various species, all coordinated through the human command network. "How many ships do we have in that area?" 73 vessels, sir. Mostly human, but also Veltari, Thorian, and even some reformed Krex ships. The fact that former pirates were now part of a rescue fleet still amazed Admiral Taiho. Commander Grixtal had surprised everyone by requesting permission to join the human rescue operations. His Krex warriors had proven to be excellent at dangerous rescue missions in hostile environments. "Send the nearest 20 ships," Admiral Taiho ordered, "and make sure Commander Grixtal's team is included. They have experience with asteroid field operations." What had become known as the Guardian fleet was now the most respected force in the galaxy, but not because of its military power. The fleet was famous for appearing wherever help was needed, fixing problems that seemed impossible, and asking for nothing in return except the knowledge that people were safe. The transformation hadn't been easy. Many species had initially been suspicious of human motives, assuming that such generosity must hide some kind of trap. But after months of consistent behavior, even the most cynical observers had to admit that humans seemed genuinely committed to helping others. Captain Jiwon, now promoted to Commodore, commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien vessels. Her flagship, the Iron Dawn, had been joined by the Veltari cruiser Golden Peace and the Thorian science vessel Wisdom Seeker. The crews had learned to work together so well that visitors often couldn't tell which species any particular officer belonged to. "Commodore Jiwon," her communications officer reported, "the Andorian rescue is proceeding smoothly. Commander Grixtal reports that all colonists have been evacuated safely, and engineering teams are already working to repair their ship." The efficiency of the multi-species rescue operations had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Human, organizational skills combined with alien specialties created teams that could handle almost any emergency. Veltari engineers were experts at fixing damaged life support systems. Thorian doctors could treat almost any known species. Reformed Krex warriors excelled at dangerous rescue operations in combat zones. But the most significant change had happened on Earth itself. The human government had established the Department of Interstellar Relations, headed by former communications officer Minji, who had become humanity's leading expert on alien cultures and languages. "Admiral Taiho," Minji contacted him from Earth, "I have some interesting news from the Galactic Trade Council meeting." "Go ahead." "They've officially designated human space as a protected humanitarian zone. Any species that attacks human vessels or colonies will face economic sanctions from the entire council. Essentially, the galaxy has agreed to defend us because of our rescue operations." Admiral Taiho smiled at the irony. Humanity had achieved the ultimate military protection not by threatening anyone, but by helping everyone. No species wanted to risk losing access to human rescue services by allowing attacks on human territory. The success had created some unexpected problems, though. The flood of requests for help was so large that even the expanded fleet couldn't respond to everything immediately. Former linguist Neon, now Director of Emergency Response Coordination, had developed a priority system for handling distress calls. "We respond to life-threatening emergencies first, then major disasters, then general assistance requests," she explained to a gathering of alien ambassadors. "But we're training local rescue teams from every species so that eventually everyone will be able to help their own neighbors the way we've been helping you." This training program had become one of humanity's most successful exports. Human rescue techniques, organizational methods, and humanitarian philosophy were being taught on hundreds of worlds. The idea that military force should be used primarily to protect people instead of conquering them was spreading rapidly through galactic civilization. Commander Do-hyun, now head of the Interspecies Science Exchange, had established research stations where scientists from dozens of species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Medical breakthroughs, technological advances, and environmental solutions were shared freely among all participants. "We're learning that cooperation produces better results than competition," he reported to the human government. "When species work together instead of against each other, everyone benefits." The most dramatic example of this cooperation had come when the Zephyrian homeworld faced destruction from a massive solar flare. The rescue operation required the combined efforts of over 300 ships from 22 different species, coordinated through human command systems, but using the specialized skills of every participant. The success of that mission had convinced even the most isolationist species that the human approach to interstellar relations was worth adopting. The old galaxy of competing empires and constant conflict was slowly being replaced by a new galaxy of cooperative alliances and mutual assistance. Back on Titan Station, the same station where Hana had first detected the Veltari distress signal, a new generation of communications officers monitored the galaxy for calls for help. The difference was that now they listened in dozens of languages and coordinated with rescue fleets from multiple species. "This is Titan control to all rescue vessels," announced the duty officer. "We have 15 active rescue operations in progress across 7 sectors. All operations are proceeding normally. The galaxy is safe, and help is always available to anyone who needs it." Admiral Tejo looked out at the stars from his flagship and reflected on how much had changed since that first distress call. Humanity had set out to save 20 aliens from a damaged trading ship and had ended up transforming galactic civilization. The irony wasn't lost on him. The aliens had sent a distress signal expecting to be rescued by a small merchant vessel or patrol ship. Instead, they had received the entire human armada, and that armada had brought with it a completely new way of thinking about power, responsibility, and the relationships between species. As new distress signals continued to arrive from across the galaxy, Admiral Tejo smiled. Each call for help was another opportunity to demonstrate that the strongest response to any crisis was compassion backed by overwhelming capability. The galaxy had learned that when you sent a distress signal, you might just get the most powerful military force in known space, and that force would use every bit of its power to make sure you got home safely. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned that power used to help others was infinitely more valuable than power used to hurt them. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and it had all started with one simple message. Help us, please.